Hi there, my name's Vince from Mr. Telephone, and in this video today I'm going to show you how you can move your router and your phone even if you have one of these, an OpenReach VDSL faceplate, or you might have an ADSL faceplate. Now, if you have either of these fitted, they're much better for the broadband side of things. The only problem is, once you have these fitted, the only place you can plug in your broadband, your router, is into these faceplates. So for example, on this one here, imagine that this is your router. That plugs into the top socket here, and then the bottom socket is for your phone. And if you want to run an extension, years ago you would just run an extension from the front plates here, but once you have one of these fitted, all that's going to do is extend the voice side of things. It won't extend the broadband. So the downside with these sockets is you have to have your router plugged in to the top socket here or into the data socket on the ADSL faceplate. So there's no way of easily running an extension if you wanted to move your router into another room. So for example, if this was in the hallway and you had all your equipment in the hallway and you didn't like the location because people were tripping over it as they were coming through the front door, then you might want to move it to another room. And really the only way of doing it is to run an extra long ADSL lead and an extra long telephone lead. But the problem with that is a lot of these leads are not very good quality, and also you're having to run two cables and it can look a bit untidy. So in this video I'm going to show you how you can run both the phone and the data down the one cable to the new location. So what you're going to need some Cat5e or Cat6 cable. In this instance I'm using white Cat5e, and then you can run this along the skirting board and it will blend in quite well. It'll be similar to running telephone cable. You're also going to need a Cat5e or Cat6 if you have them, it makes no difference, RJ45 socket. Yeah, and you're also going to need for the voice a little BT module that will fit in to the faceplate by taking out these blanks. So what you're going to end up is you're going to end up with a place to plug in your phone and a place to plug in your router in the one faceplate. And then it's up to you. You can either sink a back box into the wall, you know, like a metal electrician back box, or you can use a plastic surface back box that you can just screw onto the wall and then put this onto the surface back box. Okay, so what's going to happen is we're going to run the voice, because I'm using one of these modules with a capacitor in, we're going to run the voice down one pair and then we're going to run the data down the other pair. Now what I will say is you can only do this if you have the A and B connections. Not sure how well you can see that. The A and B connections. Let me just turn the light on. Right, so can you see the A and B down the bottom? A and B. So that's it on the ADSL faceplate. And on the VDSL faceplate, the A and B terminals are here. Hopefully you'll be able to see that. Yeah, so you can only do this if you have the A and B terminals. Most of the time you will have them. When these VDSL faceplates first of all come out, they were made for a short period without the A and B terminals, and also when the ADSL faceplates came out many years ago, some of them, the original ones, didn't have the A and B, they only had the 2, 3 and 5 for the voice, so you will need to double check that. But if you have that, all you need is the Cat5e or Cat6 cable, an RJ45 socket, a means of fixing the cable like cable clips or a staple gun, and a BT module. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what colour code to use and how to set this up. So I'm just going to bring the camera down. Right, okay, so to begin with, I'm actually going to wire up the faceplate to begin with. So what we need to do is we need to just pop out these little quarter blanks. So these just pop out like so. Now that frees up a space for us putting in the BT module. It's up to you. You need to decide beforehand if you want the RJ45 socket to be that side or that side. It's going to make very little difference. And make sure you put it the right way up. So your Cat5e there. and then you just slot that in there. Okay, so now we have an RJ45 module and a BT module. That's where you're going to plug in the phone, and this one's going to be where you plug in your router. Okay, so we're going to wire up the phone side to begin with. So you get your Cat5e cable. Now, obviously you're going to have to install this. On this table here, I'm only using a couple of meters of cable, or 1.5 meters, whatever it is. But you're going to install this cable from wherever your master socket is to wherever you want to move your router. And then once you've installed the cable, and bearing in mind, don't kink it too much, you know, so when you're, don't put massive kinks in it like that as you go along. Run it nice and neat. And also run it away from any power lines. If you've got a power cable running along, don't run this next to it. Okay, so keep it away from any power lines. So what you need to do is you need to strip back some of the cable. Now, you are going to need to strip back quite a bit because we need to wire up this socket and this socket here with the one cable. So I'm going to strip back about that much. A little bit more. Okay, now if you think you've damaged the wires, let's just zoom in a bit. If you think you've damaged the wires, then you've got drawers. Normally you will have a drawstring here, so you can use the drawstring to pull down the cable and it will cut the sheath, and then you know you won't have damaged any wires. So what you can do is you can pull it down like so. But if you're confident you haven't cut any of the wires when you've gently stripped it back, then you won't have to use the drawstring. I just wanted to show you how to use the drawstring. Okay. And then you cut it off. So you're not going to need all that, you're going to need about that much. Zoom out a bit. So what we're going to do is, to begin with, we're going to wire up the data side of the socket, and then we're going to bring the wires round to wire up the voice side of the socket. Just get this set up. Right, so you get your cable tie. When you use your cable tie, always go onto the actual cable itself and not onto the wires. Now remember, the colour code on the data sockets, your data socket might not be the same as this, but the colour code on the data sockets will be when you're using it for an Ethernet cable. But we're not using it for an Ethernet cable here, we're using it for the ADSL. So the only ones you actually need to connect up, because normally when you will wire up a data socket, you would use all 8 wires. But in this instance, the only ones we're going to use are the blues. So you see the blue there, number 4, and the white blue, number 5. Because this corresponds to the middle 2 pins on this side, and the data signal travels always down the middle 2 pins. So when you're using your ADSL cable, it will only be working down the middle 2 pins. So we need that to correspond. When we plug it into here, we need the signal to go down the middle 2 pins, so it can go down the middle 2 pins of your cable, and then that will then go to the middle 2 pins off your router. So in this instance, we're going to be using the terminals 4 and 5. Yeah. Now, you can use blue if you want, but normally on voice, the voice pair is normally blue. So just to save a little bit of confusion, just in case engineers come out in the future, I would recommend that you put it down there. We can put it down the greens, for example, but instead of using, obviously that's solid blue and white blue, we're going to use solid green and white green. It's up to you. You could use the browns. You could put it down brown and white brown, or the oranges, because in this case we're going to only use 2 wires for the voice, so you could put it down solid orange and white orange. But I'm just going to put it down the greens, but it doesn't make a difference. Just in case, again, it might confuse an engineer, because often the orange is used on terminal 3. So that's the reason I'm using it on greens on this one. So I'm just going to quickly punch those wires in, and then I'm going to bring it up to the camera to show you. Now remember, you're not putting the greens, although you're using the green pair, you're not putting the greens onto where it tells you to put the greens, because we're using this socket in a different way than we normally are. Just punch those 2 wires in. Again, when you're using your IDC tool, always go down nice and straight. So now we have terminated up the green pair on pairs 4 and 5, and that's going to be our voice. Sorry, that's going to be our data. Okay, now I'm going to bring the blue pair round, and I'm going to connect it up to the standard colour code, which is white, blue to 5. You can just see 5 there, and 2's just hidden away here. This is 2 here, just hidden away underneath the resistor. So this is 2 here. I'm not going to bother with 3. The reason I'm not putting the ringer wire through is because I've got a capacitor, and I don't want any chance of any bell wire interference inducing onto these wires over here. So if you want to know what bell wire is, bell wire interference, just Google it, but it can cause problems with your broadband. So I'm going to connect up white, blue to 5, like, which is the normal colour code, and blue to 2 here. Punch those in, again, using the chrome tool nice and straight. And that's that side done. So we got the greens feeding the data, and we got the blues feeding the voice. And these 2 wires are just spare. So let me just zoom out a bit. Okay, these orange and brown are just spare. So you can just coil these up and have them in your back box. That's what you're going to end up with this side. Okay. Now on the other side of the cable, so pretend that this is going into your back room or your office or wherever you want to move your router to. The other side of the cable, again, we need to strip off a nice amount of cable, and this is going to be where we're connecting up to the master socket. So you need to decide which is your best entry hole to put it into, because there's knockout holes everywhere in the back and the sides. So here I'm just going to put it in this bit here, like so. And we need to connect up now, just get rid of all these cables in the front. We're going to be connecting up the voice onto this front plate here, and we're going to be connecting up the data onto this bit here. Now we're going to have to keep quite a bit of slack. In fact, you know what, I might even need a bit more slack than that, because the green wires are going to go onto here, but then we need to have the blue wires quite long to go all the way onto this front plate here. So I'm just going to strip back a little bit more. Remembering, if you think you've damaged the wires, see, I know I haven't damaged them because I'm actually snapping the sheath. If you think you've damaged the wires, then use the drawstring. Also, keep the bit of sheath you've just pulled off for a minute, because I want to use that to wrap the cable tie round when I come to using the voice bit here. So let's zoom in. Now we're going to be putting the cable tie around this bit here. Like so. And we're going to be passing the cable through the cable tie. Cut off that drawstring. Passing the cable through the cable tie and securing it. Like so. Cut off the excess on the cable tie. Right, now always push a little bit back into the socket, because you're going to need a little bit of slack in there to enable you to get the socket off in the future. Because if it was too tight, if it was like that, you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle to take this socket off, this VDSL faceplate. So always push in as much slack as you can, and then that will allow the socket to come off in the future. So that's a cable tie on, and now we're going to punch these wires in. And remember, it was the greens. Now, it doesn't actually matter what wire goes to what. So for example, it doesn't matter whether I put the green to A and the white green to B. Hopefully you can see the little A and B in there. Or whether I put or the other way around, it doesn't make a difference. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do green to B and white green to A. If you were using the brown pair, I would recommend you do white brown to A and then brown to B, and it just keeps it straight. So unravel that. We don't need a huge amount of slack on this, just leave a little bit of slack just so you can get to the wires again in the future. But remember, we've left a little bit of slack on the Cat5e cable, so if we do have to cut back a bit in the future, we've still got quite a few inches there of slack. So the wires go in from that side, and then you punch them down, so we're cutting this side. We're cutting this side here, and the wires this side go in from that angle there, and then these wires will be cut. So let me just punch those in. That's what you're going to be left with for the data. So now that's the data connected up, and what we need to do is we need to now pull out this blue cable, the blue wires, and we need to connect that up to the voice in the front. So remember I said to keep a little bit of the bit that we cut earlier, a bit of the sheath. Actually, don't need much. Right, so wrap this, put the wires back through this sheath. And the reason we want this is when we cable tie the sheath onto here, it's better to cable tie onto a sheath rather than just onto the wires. So it's probably a little bit too long. You only need a very small bit like so. Zoom out. So you put the sheath on here. Okay, and now we only need the blue wires. So what we can do is we can just coil up the orange and the brown, and we've got the blue wires here. And we now need to connect up the blues onto here using the standard colour code, which is blue to 2 and white blue to 5. And like I said before, we don't need to connect up 3. 3 is the ringer wire. You would normally put orange to 3, but we're using a capacitor on the other end. So because we're using the capacitor on this end, it will all ring and work fine just on the 2 wires. So what you do is you get your cable tie, put your cable tie through here, like so, like that. Pass all the wires through. And leave a nice bit of slack. Remember, for voice, it doesn't matter if the wires are really long, it's not going to make a difference. So, what I've done here is, if you have a look down, I've actually cable tied it to the bit of leftover sheath. So we're not going to damage the wires at all. The browns and the oranges won't be used. We just need the blue pair. And we'll be doing blue to 2 and white blue to 5. And they'll be going in that way round. They'll be going in that way round, and we'll be cutting them here. Get that out of the way. So we'll be going to cut them here, and we're going to be putting them in from that angle there. So if you're using a proper IDC tool, it will do the cutting for you. If not, you have to push it in, and then you have to snip off the excess. Always snip off the excess, just in case the wires touch each other. When they go through, remember that whole cable is now live, and then if the wires were to touch each other this side, it would short itself out. So that's why you always have to cut the excess off. Again, when you're punching down, use the IDC tool nice and straight. And there you will see blue's connected to 2 and white blue's connected to 5. Okay. Now again, we've got plenty of slack in the future. You will have to push these wires just a little bit back up this way because this bit fouls it. You see the bit on the OpenReach VDSL place here? It fouls it, so you're just going to have to move the wires back up this way so it can all fit in. So it can all fit in without fouling it. Now it's going to be quite tight because the Cat5e cable is a lot stiffer. See, if you see, it's wanting to push it out here because the Cat5e cable is a lot thicker than normal telephone cable. But it's so much better using Cat5e cable when you're sending a data signal down it. So you might have to just flatten it out a little bit, maybe move the cable tie round, try to make it all as flat as possible. And then there you go. Once that's screwed in, that'll be nice and flat like it was before. And then you can still plug your voice into the front here. And if you want, you can still plug your router in here. If you did ever need to move it back to the hallway, this one here is still live. But now you have the option of, in your office or your back room or wherever you've loaded, wherever you've moved these ones to, wherever you've extended it to, you will be plugging your voice into here, like so. So that's going to be your voice socket. And then your data socket will go into there like so. So all you're doing is, you're mimicking this socket and this socket over here. This socket is now the voice, here and here, and the data here and up here. And it's all down the one Cat5e cable. So hopefully that made a little bit of sense. Apologies because I'm filming this one on my own. Yeah. So you move your router to there. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that. If you do need any of these faceplates or sockets or cable clips, then check out my shop. That's www.mrtelephone.co.uk, and when you go onto there you will see the link onto my eBay shop. Hope you found it useful. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want. I've done a lot of videos on networking and telecom, so hopefully you'll find them useful. Okay, thanks very much. Take care now. Bye.